Hello and good morning to Mike Seaman. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, mate. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. So we were just saying off camera that the last time I had you on the show, which believe it or not, was over 2 years ago, you were broadcasting from your shed.
From the shoffice.
Is that what it's called? Has that got an official sort of thing? That's where it all started. Does that still exist, that shed? Is that going to be like an artifact in a museum in 500 years?
No, we still use it. It's a home office. We've got gym equipment in there and loads of stuff. Basically, it's a big storage unit now at the end of our garden. Yeah. But when we started Raccoon, that's where we were. We had 4 desks squeezed into there and an inappropriate aircon unit that didn't deliver anywhere near the right temperature. But we made it work.
And now you've got nice plush offices in Guildford.
Yeah, they're okay. Yeah, how we've evolved.
Well, it's interesting, because I've had a few people on, obviously, over the last 2 or 3 years, and people that have come back, and I've seen their sort of changing backgrounds. And it's sometimes I see it as a measure of how successful the business or otherwise has been, depending on where they're sitting. Listen, we've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get into it. But before we sort of get an update from you about all things Raccoon Media Group. It has been over 2 years since I last spoke to you on this podcast, at least. I just want to get a sense for you, Mike, looking back over the last couple of years, and obviously through the pandemic specifically, what your overriding emotion was of that time. And I guess specifically how you, your team, the industry sort of reacted and dealt with the pandemic.
Gosh, overriding emotion. I think I'd say relief. I think, God, what 2 years. I mean, it feels like 10 years.
I know. Yeah.
I think it was the darkest time, but also actually probably our most exciting time as a business for us in terms of growth, which is, we had a conversation during the pandemic where we said, actually, if everybody else is looking left, let's look right. Everybody was going digital. So we launched loads of live events, which seemed slightly bonkers at the time and actually was. And, not everything was genius idea as I thought it was at the time, but actually we've come out of it significantly bigger, significantly stronger with more events and still here. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was really flipping tough. And, the industry's lost some really good people. We've lost some really good events and some really good companies. So the fact that little old me is still here, I would say relief.
Sure. And what about yourself personally? Because, we see externally, posts on social media, and typically posts on socials typically are positive ones, right? How do you think you dealt with it, and what sort of things that you learned as an individual that have now maybe even stood you in good stead?
I mean, the honest answer to that, and the really honest answer to that is, it was awful, and there were times when I questioned myself. I hit real lows, and I know a lot of people in the industry have felt the same. And I think it's really important to be open about that, because you get this glossy view of a company on social media, and it looks like everything's great and you've got everything sorted, and that wasn't the case for anyone. But you have to just keep rolling, don't you? And I think for me, I'm really lucky that I do some running. I don't talk about it much, but I do.
Really?
And it's like running and physical activities are like gym and things like that for me became even more important and are fully integrated into my life now. And if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been able to cope. Which is why our business is so important to me, because I genuinely believe that actually we're helping people get more active. I think that's quite important for physical and mental well-being, and it has so many benefits beyond just creating a show.
Sure. No, I agree with you. I myself started a sort of journey about a year ago trying to deal with my health, realizing that I'm getting towards 50, and started to go to the gym and swim. Actually, I found swimming quite a good release mentally, but also lots of walking. So definitely helps sort of keeping active. So thank you for that. I want to turn to the business as it stands today, and it a day, it doesn't seem like a day goes by when Raccoon are not launching something else. Maybe that's just me, or maybe it's the LinkedIn algorithm just serving me stuff when I want to see it. But just give us a summary, just paint an overview of the business as it stands today, please.
You know, I was thinking about this ahead of today, and I think when we last spoke, I think we had 2 shows.
Yeah.
And we've now got 6 in the UK, 3 in the States. We've got a digital business, and we've got, you know, well, we could have a few more this year. I've got 2 or 3 that I'm working on right now.
Tell us. I
really can't. But I mean, I won't be shy on LinkedIn as soon as I can.
Sure.
But there's some really good stuff that we're working on, and we just want to grow, and we believe that we can launch. We believe we've got a model that works, and we've got communities that can cross over. And yeah, it's just for us. It's about we talked about this. I did my big monthly kickoff, and I'm aware that I'm sounding a bit Ricky Gervais and like a cheesy CEO, but I was a bit like, this year is about growth mindset across the business, and I think a lot of people fear growth, and we need growth, and our whole business is wired for growth, so we're very focused on that.
And when you say growth, because I've been in businesses and on board, some are going for top line growth, okay, because they think, you know, ultimately that will lead to bottom line growth. Others that I guess, you know, because of where they're at, have to always focus on profit and actually cash flow growth. What's it for you? Is it a bit of both? What's the strategy behind that?
Yeah, all of the above. It's ultimately it's revenue, profit, and data are the 3 main metrics. And the bigger I mean, we now have an opt-in database of about 300,000 people, which is our biggest asset. And for a company that ran its first event 5 years ago, I think that's quite a big sort of feather in our cap. Now, how quickly can we get that to 1 million? Then we can start offering really meaningful insight on active consumers to brands, and I see that as a development opportunity for us. Obviously, you always want more revenue. Your profit margin should be increasing. You know, we know that you don't really make massive returns on products until year 3, but year 2, we want our products to be giving us decent bottom line contributions, and we have ideal models that we like all of our events to follow. Of course, none of them follow that. And some are up the top and some are a bit behind. Actually, revenue, profit, and data.
Interesting. And I've seen that you've diversified into other areas. So like you've got an equine show. And I know it's probably a while ago now for you, but I haven't spoken to you about it. Also into the snow world. That's my terminology. Maybe Snow World is a new title for a show.
I'm just going to write that down.
How do you decide? Because obviously you're specialist in sort of the areas that you go into, and I'm sure there's many that you could. How do you decide which ones you go into and which ones you don't in terms of areas of focus?
That's a good question. So firstly, on the consumer side, we look for passion-led markets where the consumer is self-identifying. So I am a X. That's really important. That it's a niche, narrowcast sort of sector that you can operate within, so you can control it quite carefully. Then it has to have scale, and that's either high value or high volume. I think we talked about this last time. The running show was never going to be high value, but actually because of the volume of runners that are out there, it was easy to make that work. Most of our shows are actually high volume. Even the snow show and the equine show, where actually the spend is bigger, the communities are big enough that we can still get the volume through the door. And really what we look at specifically is the pressure that's on the high street at the moment means that consumer retail is really difficult, and particularly in specialist markets. So it's quite difficult to go to, let's say, a running shop or a tack shop in the equine world and get everything that you need in that one visit. So you actually probably have to go to 3 or 4 different places. You have to order online, which gives a buy and a send back approach. there is no one-stop shop where you can get everything that you need. And that's the gap that we look to fill with our events. And it allows a buyer to come to one place and go, right, I'm a fan of whatever the sector is,
Sure.
be it sports or the outdoor market or cycling. And I want to get everything, I want to see everything in one room, and then I want to make a choice. I don't want to go backwards and forwards and different sizes and things like that. So that's the gap that we look to fill. And I think the opportunity that we see is brands are increasingly looking to own that connection to consumers. Previously, the retailer was kind of an intermediary, and the brands would spend their time courting the retailers as opposed to courting the customers. But more and more brands seem to be developing a direct consumer relationship. So we believe that we can help facilitate that. We also work with retailers to allow them to engage with customers as well. So I think for us, it's looking at a specialist self-identifying consumer where there's a big retail spend.
Sure. Thank you. And, for people listening, if they're thinking about, they've got, because it's one thing having an idea, right? You think, okay, this is an interesting market. Maybe it's not currently being served as well as I think it could be, but it's never as simple as that. How do you research the market? Is it a question of talking to your potential visitor and potential sponsors and exhibitors? Just give us a flavor of how, Raccoon would go about investigating a market that you think they can go into.
You have to have someone that loves it and that has an in. They don't have to be the font of all knowledge, and actually if they try and be, that can actually be quite dangerous. And going back to me on running, I thought I knew everything about running. And actually I knew what the market wanted, and actually the best thing that I did was bring someone else in to run the running show for me, because they opened up all the things that I didn't know about. But you do need that one person to get it started, to have the big idea, and they need to create the ideal, and they need to go and talk to potential exhibitors, potential visitors, potential partners. And they need to really map out, write a solid business plan and a budget, and pitch it. Then we all get in a room and we try and break it. And you get as many sensible people as you can to try and break it and tell you why it's not going to work. And then you pull it apart, and then you put it back together again, and then you do that until you get to something that doesn't feel like it can break. And at that point, you're probably about 85% certain. And at that point, you just take a leap of faith.
Sure.
Because there's always risk, and everybody will try and tell you that they do the research and they have the plan.
Yeah.
I don't know a single person who can guarantee you that a launch event will land. But if you go through a solid enough process, you can reduce the risk of it failing.
Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it? That's the nub of it. It's mitigating as much risk as possible, I guess, with doing as much research. But as you say, eventually you just got to get on and do it. Do you set yourself a time limit on how much research you do? And because I guess also there's a natural timeline when you want to launch, maybe because it's seasonal or something. So how long does that process normally take?
I think the research phase takes as long as it takes, but the in-market phase is really important. So it has to be live in market for 12 months. And actually, probably the 3 months ahead of those 12 months, you will go, no go. And that's when you know whether it's going to work or not, because that's when you start to pre-launch engage sponsors and brands and partners. So that actually when you get to launch, you can actually push it out to consumers, you can push it out to brands. And by that point, you know it's happening. And you've got a show. It's just about making sure the execution is on point.
And have there been times in the last 5 years where you've researched the market and not gone for it?
Yeah, loads. I think we're working on 8 to 10 new launch ideas at any one time, continuously. Sure. It's within the DNA of our business. And again, we did our big annual kickoff, and I said to him, look, bring me ideas, because everybody thinks the ideas come from me. They absolutely don't. 2 of the ideas that we're working on right now have come from junior members of the team in the office. They went, have you thought about this? I was like, nope. But no one ever consults junior members of the team about ideas, because somehow their ideas aren't as valid. But these guys are in completely different markets and spaces where we are. And in my opinion, they probably have much better insight into markets where they live and play than us old gits do.
Interesting. No, and we're going to come and talk about company culture and how you foster that sort of openness that people can speak up and feel like they're being listened to in a minute. I just want to talk about your expansion into the US. I think we possibly touched upon it previously, or definitely since I've spoken to you since the last podcast. But history, and not just in the exhibition world, is littered with companies that have tried to take a product or a service from these shores into the US and not been successful for whatever reason. Why the US? Why Boston? I think specifically is where obviously you've got shows. Talk to me about how you have tried to geoclone and what shows there are actually that you're doing in the US at the moment.
Yeah, so we so to pick that apart, why the US? I mean, it's the biggest market. It's reasonably accessible to us in terms of language barriers, and we had some ins over there. So some connections who could open doors. So then we started researching it, and it just felt obvious, particularly for the running show, where the biggest running market is, outside of, anywhere is the US. So you've got two of the marathon majors there. You've got really big established marathons in most states. You've got a really strong running culture, particularly in Boston, which is why we started there. And we had a really good retail partnership with a company over there who helped us deliver the retail side of the event. So we went for it, and we then got a little bit overexcited, and we said, okay, we're going to launch 3 all at once.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and then we pulled 2 of those away because we went, no, we want to do one thing well, and we ran the first Boston running show in that traded in February this year. And it was wicked. It was so good, despite -22.
I've worked in Boston. I remember coming out of the airport the first time I went there in January, whenever it was, 2008. And it was like, if people know and remember the film Cool Runnings, when they came out of the airport, the Jamaican bobsleigh team, into wherever they were, it was free. It was like, I think they called it frigid air. It's like -30 or something ridiculous.
I've never been that cold. It's so cold that it hurts. And it was, that was a test. But people in Massachusetts are tough. They came out. They showed up. The show went well. We acquired a show in Boston, the Snow Show. So we have 2 shows over here. We've got the National Snow Show, and then we've just launched the London Snow Show, which will happen at XL. And the National Snow Shows at the NEC. And then we got chatting to the Snow Sports Industries Association over there. They bought a consumer show during the pandemic. They'd sold their trade show and bought a consumer show because they saw that macro trend from brands looking to engage direct to consumer. And they hadn't been able to run it because of the pandemic. So they chatted to us, and we came to a deal. So we took that over. We traded that back in October. That was mega. I mean, it was so strong. That could double in size this year, we think, based on how it's performing at the moment.
So that was your first acquisition, was that right?
That's never done that before. That was kind of a journey.
And do you see, again, people I talk to, they have a specific buy and build strategy, right? That's why they set the business up, and that's what they do. They might do the odd launch, but they buy and build. Is acquisition for you just still an opportunistic thing, or is it intentional now to have a look at?
Well, we're not stuck in any particular way of doing things. We just want to grow, and we want to grow aggressively. And actually, if an acquisition comes along that looks right and fits our requirements, we'll take it. We're fortunate enough to have some decent people behind us in the business who have got that. I wouldn't have known what to do on that if I was all by myself. I would have blagged it, but I've got some really strong people on the board who support me. I think some of them, and that's really good. And I think again, we've got a strong team around me now as well. So I think we'll probably talk about that in a bit. But some of the people within the business just enable us to go and take chances like that, have conversations and learn. And it was a really interesting experience for me to manage that through. I think we finally sealed the deal. I was in Edinburgh for my mum's 60th birthday, and 70th birthday, sorry. And I was sort of closing it in the hotel lobby because it's a US, and it was just like I had no one to celebrate with because everyone else was asleep upstairs. So I just had a little gin and tonic on my own in the bar. But brilliant experience to go through. We've got a strong partnership with the association ongoing, and they've got a profit share with us, and we're also probably going to do some more stuff with them. And actually, it was all, the majority of the deal was just done on a handshake, and it was really reassuring. And I think that's where we knew we had the right partners. And then the rest is just lawyers and back and forths, and having some grown-ups in the background who can stop me being too crazy.
Thank you. I went to your website, and it Raccoon. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it used to be called Raccoon Events rather than Raccoon Media Group. I might be wrong in that.
That's right.
And I went on the website, and it refers to the business as a high growth media business. And it's interesting. It's sort of interesting to me that not an events business, right? So obviously you've got events. Is that intentional? Just describe the rationale behind being positioned as a media business and not an events business.
Yeah, because we started as an events business, and then actually we built out and we've got different products now. So we see significant opportunities within our data. We have a digital brand called outsideandactive.com, which is, that's a phenomenal brand. We've got YouTube channels, we've got social media communities numbering hundreds of thousands. We have significant data, and we needed to start thinking about ourselves as beyond the event. A lot of people talk about 365 community engagement. I think that is a bit of a rabbit hole sometimes. But
omnichannel is the word, isn't it? That we came out of the pandemic with.
It's Paddy Cosgrove talks about this thing about with people saying the Easter Bunny. If a management consultant came to him, he'd say you should have a go at Christmas, but actually the thing that makes the Easter Bunny special is Easter. I kind of agree with that. I think that the shows stand on their own 2 feet and they're really strong. But what they do is it's kind of like a spear for me, and they're the tip of the spear, and they give you access to the market, permission to play. They give you relationships, and then the output of that is data, which sits underneath that. And then what you do with that data doesn't necessarily need to link to the show, but as long as it's permission based and GDPR compliant, blah blah blah. But actually, you can use that for other purposes, and you can talk to your community 365. Maybe not with the show brand, or maybe with the show brand. It depends on how you want to work in the market. But there's a significant opportunity there, and we felt that as a business, that was going to become a big part of our strategy moving forwards. And we want our digital business to accelerate to a point where it's bigger than some of our biggest shows, and eventually, 30 to 40% of the business revenues, I would hope, would come from our digital channels. So repositioning the name of the business is the first step on that journey. There are companies we admire that we would love to emulate. I mean, you look at what Future have done, and it's phenomenal. And they seem to have gone beyond events. They've got sort of the digital and the data piece, and then below that they've got e-commerce and affiliate revenues. And I mean, that's the dream. That's where we would like to get to. I suspect that's quite a long process for us, but starting with the name was kind of a symbol of intent.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's definitely an intentional decision. And you mentioned there about community, and obviously everything you do is community centric. And you've mentioned this term, and it'd be interesting for you to define it for people that aren't aware of an inside out marketing approach, which you mentioned to me yesterday. And if I'm honest, I was looking up frantically and I got 50 different definitions. So I'm going to let you sort of talk about inside out marketing.
I'm not sure it's actually a thing. But okay. We've called it a thing, so it is now. If you've got something cool, give it a phrase. But essentially, all of our events are community driven. It's really important for us that we give access to and engagement to the whole community. So that's quite deliberate. So that goes from everywhere through to diversity and inclusion, and targeting specific groups that are underrepresented and bringing them into the fold, to giving back. So a lot of our shows either have charity partners or have donation schemes, like we do a grant scheme at the Run Show, so that you create this symbiotic relationship with the community where you are actually a part of the community. And that's what is meant by the term inside out. What does that look like in real life? So we want to create a big fence around the whole community, invite everybody in and be genuine and be part of it. So you have to have someone who gives a toss, actually doesn't always do everything for a straight revenue return. You have to give back. You have to listen. And then in terms of how we operate, you have to try and be good. I don't know if that makes sense, but our way of doing that, and particularly the big fundamental difference in the way that we operate, which is quite different to other consumer shows, is we actually give the majority of our tickets away free. So probably 95% of our ticket revenues go, and that puts us shoulder to shoulder with the people within the communities that we operate. So we'll go to a running club, or we'll go to a cycling club, or we'll go to a community group that exists online. That allows us to target diverse groups. And for example, in the outdoor industry, it's traditionally very white male. Our show has not changed the world, but it has moved the needle. So we had 10% of our audience identified as non-white at the last show, which is not enough, but that's a massive stride forwards. We've actually had more females attend the show than males. Now, if you wound back to the old outdoor shows that used to exist, 10, 15 years ago, that was very, very different. And it's a very deliberate strategy for us. And by not having that pressure on ticket revenues, we can actually go and target specific groups and offer, for example, free platforms to organizations like Black Trail Runners or Muslim hikers or whoever it may be that we're working with to enable them to give their communities access to the event. So obviously we do make money from tickets, and that is money that you're letting go. But I think actually what we get is this community vibe around the show where people actually love it, they feel part of it, and they feel that they've been given value. And for some reason, that seems to work.
Sure. Interesting. Okay, so inside out marketing, you heard it here first.
I don't know if I explained it very well.
message Mike for more information. Maybe you can write a textbook about it. I just want to turn our attention to visitor numbers. Again, I speak to lots of people, but most of my guests are in the B2B space. How are you finding, especially that you said, a lot of your tickets are free. How are you finding conversion from, pre-reg to actually attendance?
It was really low as when we first came back. So it used to be 2 to 1 was always our conversion rate on consumers. It went down, I think, as low as about 1 in 3. And that was. I mean, the first show, you've got to remember, we were one of the first shows back out, and we ran a running show with masks. So conversion was understandably lower then. I think we're much better now. We're getting back towards that 2 to 1. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're probably 40% is probably about where we are at the moment. But it's getting better and better with every show. And there's so many factors that influence that for us. If it's a paid for ticket, and we do put a gate on in the last sort of 6 weeks. If it's a paid for ticket, there's much higher conversion rates. Obviously, the later they book, much higher. If they book via certain channels, you can get a lower conversion rate. So it's a bit more detailed than that. But at a top line, conversions did get pretty low during COVID, and they've now. I think they're getting much better.
So is it a question of, someone signs up, let's just say 6 months in advance, right? If it's free, it's not costing them to do anything. Again, lots of people I talk to, it's about that one person communicating, and you've spoken about the community-centric approach. So I guess you're communicating with them at all times and not just sending them emails and stuff about the event. What are you trying to do? So let's say I sign up today and the show's in 6 months. Talk to me about that journey. How am I being continually sort of engaged with to then convince me to actually turn up?
I think it's about drip feeding content and excitement is the main way. So what you don't want to do is put it all out there and then go quiet. So for us, we deliberately release things over a period of time, and it's without getting too granular on it. That can be a speaker a month, it can be a speaker a week, it can be when the agenda goes live, it can be new features, new exhibitors, etc. And we do that via a multitude of channels. So we don't just use email. Social media is very successful for us, and we amplify social media. But we've got quite a strong organic following already. And then it's working with partners and all of the usual things. There's nothing particularly groundbreaking that we do, but it is a drip feed approach.
When you say social media, again, only because I mostly deal with B2B, I'm working on the assumption that's the likes of Instagram, TikTok as well. Well, or not. Or not.
If I refer to it, because I don't understand it. But so for us, the two main channels are Facebook and Instagram in terms of our visitor promotion. LinkedIn works very well for us in terms of Exprom. TikTok, we have an agency that we've been doing some work with. We are getting better results. We have, if I'm honest, we've yet to see it translate through effectively. The one not to ignore is Twitter. It does still exist, and it does still have some reach. It's not our primary channel, as I say, that's Facebook and Instagram, but Twitter is probably actually delivering more than TikTok at the moment. Now, where that goes in the future, I think you've got to place your bets, haven't you?
Sure. And I guess you obviously have a lot of celebrities or ambassadors to the show. Is it also a question and a case of, making sure that they're supporting everything you do as well?
Yeah, that's a very managed process. So we, for each show, we have about 100 ambassadors. They wear our T-shirts, they attend events, they talk. We don't give them a script. They talk authentically about our brands and our values. And that is a marketing piece in itself. Our speakers is a bit more, we send them stuff and they put it out there. They let people know when they're going to be there, etc. Although some of them we've become really close with over the years because we've done multiple shows now, and it's a bit more familiar. But yeah, the ambassadors are just brilliant because they just love it. And our ambassador community, we're so they turn up early at the show, they help give out the bags, they really get involved, and we make space for them to do that, which as an organizer can sometimes be a bit, well, hang on, I'm supposed to be in charge here. But actually, if you give people a role and some room to exist, then they really feel a sense of ownership. And that's really important and fundamental for all of our brands, is that the community feel a sense of ownership towards the brand, because that keeps it alive for longer.
Sure. You must have had many wow moments, actually, in terms of some of the celebs, ambassadors, people that you've admired, and all of a sudden you're sort of standing next to them at an opening of a show or at a stage. Does that ever get like, it's just Carl Lewis, it's just whoever it is? Like, what's the biggest wow moment you've had so far?
I think, Kelly Holmes for the first year, because that was the first time I'd ever done it. And she was just amazing. And so we're really lucky. They've all been amazing. We haven't had any, I'm not saying that just to be PC. We actually haven't had any people who you don't want to hang out with. But Carl Lewis was very, for me, that was like, wow, I just hung out with Carl Lewis. He's really flipping cool. But my funniest story is we just did our outdoor expo, and Ben Fogle has opened that show twice, and he was really busy on the stage. There's a big crowd of people. My mum's going to kill me for telling this story. And he had a huge crowd of people. And then he was going to go and do a meet and greet. So as we took him off the stage, I was like, look, why don't you come into the green room for a minute just to get your bearings before you take you back out? Because it can be quite intense, hundreds of thousands of people sort of trying to get to see you. Hundreds or thousands, not hundreds of thousands. But anyway, so he comes into the green room. My mum walks past, because my mum comes to all my shows. And she sort of looks through the window, and I was like, come on in. And so my mum and my aunt come in to meet Ben Fogle. Ben is delightful, being so nice to her. And he says, oh, you must be really proud. You must come to all of his shows. You must love it. And she went, no, Ben, but I love you. And I was like, nice. Play it cool, Mum. Play it cool. And it was like, I've rinsed her mercilessly about this, and now I told her on the podcast, she's going to flip and kill me. But that was one of my favourite moments.
Yeah. But I guess it never gets tiring to meet some of your heroes.
No, if you love what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life.
Sure. I've heard that somewhere before. You've stolen that one.
That definitely didn't come from me.
I just want to turn attentions to sustainability, because I know that for Raccoon and for yourself personally, it's important, and I know that you're aiming to be net zero by 2025. Talk to me about why it's important for you, how you think the industry is doing in that regard, and then sort of finally what Raccoon are doing.
There's two reasons why it's important. I think the first is just because it is, and we have a duty to leave a planet for the next generation. I've got kids, and for any of us to think that this isn't our responsibility is, I think, lazy and deplorable. So I think there's a moral imperative, but I think there's a commercial opportunity here. Consumers want it. There's tons of research out there, and they expect it. And I imagine that in the not too distant future, it will be a prerequisite. You will have to operate in this manner. So why not be one of the first to do it? Why not go and do it now and actually, benefit from that? I think there is a commercial incentive and commercial imperative to do this kind of thing, because particularly in our space, because a lot of our events and digital products are about encouraging people to get outside and play or be active. And if you're screwing up the planet while you're doing that, it kind of doesn't go together. And the values of our brands need to be aligned with the values of our company. And so for us, sustainability isn't really an option. We just have to do it.
And how do you think the exhibition industry in general is doing?
Real talk.
Be honest. Be honest.
I think there's a lot of groups, and there's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of standards, and there's a lot of trying to figure it out, which I completely get. I think there is a lack of action in some places, and that can come across as greenwashing. I don't think it is greenwashing, but I think there's no excuse not to be doing some stuff. And I'll try to get through an interview without talking about carpet, but I'll probably talk about that in a minute. But there are some things that we do because that's the way it's always been. And actually, there were some practices that we did in the old days that were probably more sustainable than what we do now. And actually, maybe we should just reconsider. And we give ourselves so many excuses like, oh, it has to look like this. I took aisle carpets out of every single one of my shows, and barely anyone noticed. I had no complaints. I put a board up saying why. It's 20 tons of CO2 per show. We're doing it. And we were using a recycled carpet, but I would love not to do that because I'd love the show to look prettier. But for God's sake, when our kids are saying to us, why didn't you do anything? And we said, well, we needed that carpet just to make it look pretty. Someone out there has to have a solution for this. I can't believe that the only solution for us to make our events look pretty is to put something down that's a single-use product for 2 or 3 days, rip it up and send it away. And everybody thinks recycling is the answer. But if recycling has a carbon footprint, it has a cost, and you need to account for that. So for me, I think the industry is lagging behind. I think it needs to move quicker. And I think if we're not careful, we will be seen as unsustainable in both ways. I genuinely believe that events are a sustainable solution. You take ours, for example. You come to our show, you can buy everything you need. You go to a shop or you order online and send it back, and order online and send it back. The carbon cost of your shopping to get the stuff that you need is significantly higher if you do it in 3 or 4 different hits, or 5 or 6, or even 10 or 12. Whereas if you go to one place and do it, it's done. So for me, I think there's actually that translates in B2B as well. The stat that was done by the working group on the B2B events is, you save 10 business class flights if you go to an event. I mean, so I genuinely think events could be a sustainable solution, but we have to account for that on-site execution and those things that are awkward and tough conversations. And I know I'm annoying because I keep wanging on about it, but I'm wanging on about it because it's important. And if we don't do something about it, someone's going to make us.
Sure. And I think also it's about involving all the stakeholders, right? So it's exhibitors, visitors, staff, industry, and trying to come up with some sort of joined up solution. But I guess what you're saying is generally, yeah, it's great that there's lots of conversations, probably needs to be a bit more action.
Basically, we have had a pretty tough time. I mean, half of us have just been trying to stay alive. So I think we also have to forgive ourselves and also recognise how far we've come. I mean, it is a conversation that everybody's having, and almost everybody has a plan now. So, you know, I don't think it's all doom and gloom.
No, and I think, you know, it's reached a tipping point, and, you know, to affect change, you normally have to have carrot or stick, and it probably need a combination of both. Want to move on to sort of the final topic. You recently won Best Company Culture at the Exhibition News Awards, I think last month, just a few weeks ago. I saw some videos of your team celebrating. How rewarding was that for you personally?
I talked to the guys about it on the Monday after we got back, and I was like, it's probably the proudest moment of my career, winning any award that rewards the culture that you've created. Like that's just so meaningful, because I genuinely believe that in doing business the right way, I think I do it the right way. I try to, you know, I hope everybody else would say that we do. You know, that starts with things like flexible working. I remember the first grown-up hire, a lady that we brought in, is somebody I've worked with for 16, 17 years. And she couldn't get a job at her old company because she had 2 kids and she wanted to pick them up from school. And she wasn't given the flexibility. So she was the first proper hire that we made into the shoffice. And because we were able to be flexible, I was like, well, okay, that feels like an opportunity. And that shoffice was what formed our culture, because it was just a group of mates. I launched the running show because I loved running. I don't talk about it much. And I was like, I saw an opportunity. I think I can make this work, but I don't have any money. I'm just going to do it from the shed. Can you all help me? And loads of people helped me. Even on the day, I had really senior people from the industry manning the registration desk or helping out in the sales lounge. And it was always mates. And I kind of didn't want to lose that and create this company that has layers and division. And obviously, as you grow, you have to create layers. And I'm in an office now, which is weird. I like being on the floor.
You're still wearing a T-shirt, though. You're still wearing a T-shirt.
Yeah, and I'm generally the scruffiest person in the office as well. I wander around in flip-flops. But we talk about culture a lot. We talk about what we want it to mean. We wrote out a list of values that we want the company to believe in. I think there's about 12 of them now. And we try and give everyone a voice. We do lots of things that I think are important. We enable people to have time away from their desk so they can go and exercise. We do like run clubs. We do meetings as we're walking. We do things like that. We try and live and breathe what we do. We give fast progression. We try and recruit from within. So I think actually, and these are all, none of these ideas are new. They're just bits that I've stolen from different companies. I mean, that was actually closer still. One of the best things that they did is, God, if you were there for 4 years, you probably had 4 different job titles as you flew up the ranks. And I envied that, and I thought, well, I want to create that level of progression here. And then there were places like Clarion where I worked, where actually I felt like you had a real degree of autonomy. So we say we're accountability based, not hours based. So the general rule is, I don't care where you work or when you work, as long as you do your job. Sure. And that actually enables you to focus on smart objectives, as opposed to what time did that person step away from their desk, and that culture of people, being the last one to leave, which is, it's not what we want it to be.
Sure.
I think you just got to approach it with a sense of fun and be humble. There's a lot of people who say I'm not very humble, but I try and consult everybody and give everyone an equal voice. I think we do that. I hope we do that. We've won it this year. Does it mean we'll win it again? I don't know. But at this point in time, that's probably my biggest achievement.
Yeah, and I've seen, posts people have been with you have obviously risen through the ranks. There was a few posts recently. I know, was it Natalie?
Yeah, so Natalie's an MD, Joe's been promoted to CEO, Ashley's marketing director. And if you have a aggressively growing business, you can create those opportunities for people. And I'll be honest, the people we have in this business are significantly better than me at most things. And actually that's really important. You just hire good people and get out of the way. And if we then add new products, and my focus is, right, what else can I give you? What else can I give you? That creates opportunity for them. And there's that old management saying, isn't it, about a person-centric business or a people-centric business? I think we've been people-centric since pretty much, well, Natalie was that first hire in the office. And we've been reliant on each other since that day. Everyone had this perception that it was me. It wasn't. And actually the people I have around me are, they're the ones who do all of the hard work. I just take all the credit.
That's a good soundbite. Just finally, I mean, your role as a CEO, we've all worked with people that have got, let's say, different styles of management and leadership. I guess the vast majority, if not all people, if I said, what do you think of Mike? It's a nice chap, amiable, approachable, so on. Is there ever a time where you feel you have to change up your leadership style? I'm not saying be aggressive and dictatorial, but if something's particularly not going right, not because anyone's done anything wrong, but you have to just change your style. And maybe if it doesn't come naturally to you because that's not your personality, how do you go about doing that?
I'm ruthlessly honest, and people will always get an honest answer from me, and I think that's the best way. Mainly because I'm really crap at lying. But I think people respond well. So I'm not always nice. I don't always tell people what they want to hear, and sometimes the opposite. But I'm relentlessly honest, and I think if you hold true to that, then the difficult conversation. I don't shout at people. I don't smash desks or doors because I don't think that's me. But if you're missing a number or you're underperforming or whatever it may be, I'll call you on it and we'll have an honest conversation about it. And I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult to argue with that if it's unemotional and it's factual. And I try and keep it that way. I think you can't underestimate the importance of someone like Jo Tyler in our business. So she's our COO, and we're sometimes quite different and sometimes very aligned. And actually, we make a lot of those big decisions together, and we sort of check each other quite a lot, which I think is quite important. And then with Natalie and Steve and Matt and Mark, who are the rest of our sort of senior management team, we kind of have a range of different personality types that all combine. So as a CEO, I think my job is to set the direction, inspire the growth, and create the culture. And where we go from there is based on the people around. And as long as that senior management team is having a sort of an open, honest dialogue that's no one's ever falling out, no one's ever taking the piss or being distrustful. It's just open, honest dialogue. If you have that, then it filters down, I believe.
Fantastic. Mike, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to hearing more about you said hopefully you can have some new news for us in the not too distant future.
I'm open today, mate, so I might let you know.
Oh, right, there you go. So by the time this has gone out, then people would have read about it. But seriously, it's great to see your growth since you started. It's really impressive to see from an outside, people developing and into senior roles into your organization. So I wish you the very best for the future.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. Well done you as well. I mean, look how massive this has got. since
I'm interviewing Mike Seaman. I mean, this is how big. This is how big it's got.
I was going to say, I saw that you've interviewed Doug Emsley and Phil Saw, and now you come to me. I mean, how the mighty have fallen, mate.
Well, there you go. I've got to throw some scraps. Mike,
yeah,
pleasure.